So this paper is correcting the false worldview of chondrites with stellar metamorphosis. December 30th, 2017 is when I put it on Vixra. Chondrites in the year 2017 are still accepted and interpreted as being formed from dust in the early solar system, just as they were in 1987, before the age of asteroids and before stellar metamorphosis theory was developed. The author was only 2 years old. I was only 2 in 1987. So Celeste, I was Scarlett's age, and when the book that I was critiquing was written. So to think about, if Scarlett becomes my age and she writes about this as well, whatever I'm writing now, maybe she can disprove would be pretty cool. But just kind of gives you a little time frame here for how many years it takes major understandings, major theories to change. It takes generations. The replacement interpretation is presented and shows the reader where mainstream science went wrong and where alternative science is correct. I'll read this out to you guys. I feel like reading this whole paper. I think I did a good job on it. Maybe some people might differ in that opinion, but I have here, the following is a word-for-word excerpt from the book Meteorites and Apparent Bodies, or Apparent Planets by Harry Y. McSween Jr. On page 35, he writes, Imagine a witness at the birth of the solar system, painstakingly observing and recording each event as it unfolds. What would such a recording be worth to science now? The origin and early evolution of the sun and planets are still, to a degree, shrouded in mystery because there are no surviving witnesses or records. None, that is, but chondrites. The name of this important meteorite group derives from the ancient Greek word chondros, meaning grain or seed, a reference to the appearance produced by numerous small round inclusions called chondrules. So, a chondrule, think of like a tapioca pudding. You have those little bubbles in it. Same thing, really, but some of them are larger, some of them are smaller, and they're all clumped together. In this chapter, we still attempt to lift the shroud a bit and peek into the dark recesses of early solar system history. We do this by examining chondrites, yada, 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 yada. And then it has here, once upon a time, if chondrites contain records of early solar system processes, they must be very old, but how old are they? And how does their age compare with that of the solar system? The Earth and our most accessible source of solar system material and its formation age should be the same as that for the whole system. This, of course, presumes that there was no significant gap in time between the formation of the sun and the planets, and we have no theoretical reason or evidence to suggest such a hiatus. Little does Harry Y. McSween Jr. know, there was lots of evidence to show that there was a major hiatus between every single object in the solar system. In fact, their physical appearance and their level of evolution is what gives all the evidence. All the evidence shows us that there absolutely had to have been a hiatus between every single star in our system. That's why they're all different to begin with. They're not the same age whatsoever. Okay, so I have here, hang on you guys, this is going to be kind of long. Following from above, it should be explained clearly that there are assumptions as well as admitted assumptions that are forced based on extremely limited data. As well, the data was ignored that was actual evidence to suggest a very different worldview. There simply just was not a theory that could explain it. There was no stellar metamorphosis in 1987. Mr. Walensky was 2 years old. Now that we are in the age of asteroids, evolving stars, mislabeled exoplanets, and a theory that can explain them, we can go back to good science instead of piling massive amounts of assumptions together in an ad hoc fashion. Above, McSween states that a person, in order to possibly understand the birthing of a solar system, should imagine what the solar system would look like given we could be around to record such an event as it unfolded. This is quite clearly a misdirection based on an enormous bias, which is the bias that the bodies in the solar system all formed at the same time. They didn't all form at the same time. In this case, bias and assumption can be used interchangeably. If we were to have a spaceship orbit right above the Earth and time travel to 4.5 billion years or so ago, we would get to observe the Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Venus, Mercury, Ceres, etc. just beginning to form. This should lead the reader to the very obvious mistake. What if Earth is vastly older than the Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus? What would that look like? Would they even be orbiting anything that we are familiar with? What would the Earth look like itself? Would the Sun even be there? What if Earth was orbiting some other star entirely? None of that is taken into account. The extreme simplifying assumption is that the solar system essentially formed as is, as a singular construct, the solar system. This is the problem, reader. McSween and a huge amounts of academics all assume the solar system to be a single body. Yet when it is observed in telescopes, it appears to be thousands of disconnected bodies separated by, at times, billions of kilometers of hard vacuum. It's not a single body. It's thousands of objects, all separated by billions of kilometers of hard vacuum. This is a huge problem. So to say we can observe the solar system forming automatically assumes all the bodies in the solar system, regardless of how vastly disconnected they truly are the same age and formed where they are observed, and have not changed or evolved to their current state from incredibly violent pasts, well beyond their current configurations and levels of differentiation and their compositions. I know that's kind of a mouthful. It is clear imagination can lead us enormously astray from reality, given we assume things to be true which are not. That's the problem with academics. They assume so much to be true and they build their reality and their models on it. And then when you tear down the assumptions, when you kick the legs out from underneath the table, everything comes crashing down. That's why assumptions are incredibly both dangerous and powerful. If you build your models and your theories and your ideas up on assumptions that are not true, then everything just goes haywire. If you assume that you're driving and somebody can see you, like say you're riding a motorcycle and you assume the cars can see you, well then you're not going to be as careful as you were if you assume that they can't see you. So that's a kind of a driving example, but you have to be careful of what you assume. If you assume wrong things, you're going to get yourself in trouble. And that's what the astronomers have done. They have assumed across the board a bunch of false ideas, and then they just never change the assumptions. Yet the assumptions are what are causing the problems to begin with. McSween also states that the solar system formation is shrouded in mystery, yet clearly there is no mystery. Of course, I'm kind of saying this from a time aspect. It's 2020. Of course we know how planets are formed. They're old stars. They were shrouded in mystery to McSween back in 1987. Just sucks. I wish I could tell him that, but I don't know. Maybe he sees these videos or has read the theory. If anything, it is confirmation bias rooted in false knowledge, not a mystery which confounds us and prevents understanding the stars. The astronomers that observe the solar system are looking at the objects as being one object. Just to make clear with an analogy, just imagine you are standing in the middle of a large crowd of people. They're all walking around in large looping circles around you. Since they're all walking around in large looping circles around you, does that mean they are all formed from the leftovers of your birthing? That would be extremely difficult to accept and rather gross. Yet that is exactly what astronomers accept when they look at the solar system. They all assume the people who are walking around you are leftovers from your birthing. They are not independent entities with their own histories and lives. That's like a nurse being in the living room and saying, well, the baby was born, therefore the nurse was formed out of the baby's remains when it was born. It's like, what? That doesn't make any sense at all. That's total insanity. No, I don't think anybody could convince you of something that insane. But that's exactly what astronomers do. They say once the sun is born, leftover remains of the sun formed entire planets, billions of kilometers away from it. It's like, you guys, that doesn't make any sense at all. They're independent entities. They have nothing to do with the sun other than the fact that they orbit it. Sure, people in mosh pits can all have the same musical interests, but to assume they were formed from you being born, no way. The sun, Neptune, Earth, Jupiter, they are all independent entities. They are all evolutionary structures, each with their own vast histories, mutually exclusive of each other. The fact that they orbit the sun now does not mean that is their original configuration, and to assume such is myopic based on outdated theory and groupthink. McSween also states the chondrites are the only objects that can tell us of the past formation events which the solar system formed from. Again, if the solar system bodies are all mutually exclusive, and the solar system, as is understood, is actually composed of a multitude of evolving objects independent of each other, then clearly chondrites tell us of something completely different. They actually tell us of the interiors of highly evolved stars. They show us what the interiors of Mars, Venus, Mercury, and Earth are composed of, which is ironic as the very book itself is titled Meteorites and Their Parent Planets. Why would a researcher write up a book on chondrites being formed from the early solar system, essentially does not exist as a singular construct, when the book title lays down the very truth? Basically, he's saying, this is what the truth is in the title, lays it all on the line, just in one sentence. And then he goes about talking about how the chondrites are formed in the early solar system. Chondrites are clearly the remains of bodies that have been smashed up, parent bodies. They're the remains of smashed up stars, dead stars. A meteorite is a piece of a destroyed world, evolved or dead star. A chondrite is a piece of a long since destroyed world. As well, given that the world evolved at a specific rate to allow life to form, could have also been a world that hosted it on the scale that Earth hosts human beings and forests and other various things, as outlined in the Krypton hypothesis. Now, I told Celeste this earlier. I said, the Krypton hypothesis, it's the idea that when an old star is destroyed, its remains get scattered throughout the galaxy, and then those remains enter in the atmospheres of other evolving stars, and sometimes we can find them on the ground. We call them meteorites. That's what chondrites are. That's what chondrites are. That's what meteorite falls are. Those are pieces of highly evolved stars, dead stars that have been smashed up and have been wandering the galaxy and the universe as a whole until they enter in the atmosphere of another star or make impacts with another star, and they just get recycled, and they keep on going through that process eternally. But the Krypton hypothesis in particular states that when you pick up a meteorite, that could be the interior or a piece of a star that hosted life on it, just like Earth. So essentially what I'm saying, like in the movie Superman, when you had Superman, leaving a spaceship that his parents sent him out, and then he came to Earth, and then his parents and his entire civilization died on Krypton when it blew up. I don't know why exactly, but when that object blew up, and then those remains scattered out throughout the galaxy, there was a civilization on Krypton. So when geologists pick up a meteorite, you're possibly picking up the core or pieces of remains of a star like Earth, a highly evolved star like Earth, that at one point hosted life on it. So in the future, when humanity leaves Earth, or stays here and our planet gets destroyed, the pieces of Earth are going to be wandering out in the galaxy and entering in the atmospheres of other stars, and other beings are going to pick up remains of our smashed up Earth, and they're going to be looking at it, scratching their head, like, where did this come from? And then another human being or person on this other star is going to be like, oh, well, it's a piece of the remains of a star that could have had life on it. And I'll be like, yeah, well, and this cycle continues on and on and on, and that's how it's been. The history repeats itself. Only that kind of history repeats over billions and billions of years, possibly trillions of years. Who knows how many times this process has happened? It's incredible to try to imagine something like that, and I suggest not doing that because it just will make your brain explode. But Anyways, I'll link this paper to the bottom of the page. Of course, maybe there are typos in here. I didn't do spell check, but December 30th, 2017, still true today. And 2020, so far it's been almost 36 years. And now we know what chondrites actually are. All right, McSween, that talk was for you, bud. Later.